The moment that email slipped out, everything changed, and not quietly, not subtly, but like a cracking glass that suddenly spiderwebs across the entire surface, exposing everything underneath. Because this wasn't just a leak, this was a glimpse behind a curtain that was never meant to move. And now everyone is staring.
Well, what better way to do that than to go to these countries and sort of test run how the business could go if they expand into Australia? I think nothing has been confirmed, but certainly it feels like that's the mood music.
What was supposed to be a polished, perfectly timed image reset for Meghan Markle suddenly feels like a controlled narrative spiraling out of control. One private email, just one, and yet somehow it carried enough weight to shake the entire foundation of an international tour. Why? Because it wasn't just logistics, it was intense. Planning, strategy. The kind of behind-the-scenes detail that once exposed invites people to read between the lines and then dig even deeper. And here's the thing no one can ignore, the timing. This wasn't some random leak dropped into a quiet moment. No, this hit right when the spotlight was supposed to shift back onto her projects, her message, her carefully rebuilt public image. Instead, the spotlight twisted, warped. Suddenly, people weren't talking about empowerment or initiatives, they were asking questions, sharp ones, uncomfortable ones, questions that don't go away once they're asked. Then came the deeper layer, because once people realized what the email was tied to, a luxury women's retreat in Australia, the conversation didn't just grow, it split, clean down the middle.
So, can I just tell you that Australia has tackled illegal immigration very successfully. And I think given the fact that Harry and Meghan are on their way, I think it's time to reactivate Operation Sovereign Borders, Paul. Airstrikes, get the boats out. Because no, the bottom line is, I mean, I can't speak for your viewers, but I will tell you that lots of Australian viewers of the Mark Dolan show don't want to see Harry and Meghan. The reason why it went down well in 2018, Paul, is because the Australian public didn't know Meghan Markle very well. Well, they know her now.
On one side, supporters defending the concept. High-profile event, exclusive access, big names. Of course it costs money. That's how influence works, they say. That's how attention gets generated. But on the other side, critics circling like they've been waiting for this exact moment. And their question hits harder than anything else. If this is about empowerment, why does it come with a price tag only a select few can afford? And just like that, the narrative shifts again. Because now it's not just about a leak, it's about contradiction. Message versus reality. Public image versus private planning. And people are noticing the gap. They're measuring it. And the more they look, the wider it seems. But here's where things start to feel almost too perfect, too convenient. Because another question creeps in, spreading quietly at first, then louder, then everywhere. Was this really an accident?
So interesting. I was actually on that royal tour back in 2018, and the optics for us at that time, because we didn't know what was going on behind the scenes, and to Tom Bauer's book, I mean, these are the claims that he's talking about. It's the lead up to Megxit. But for us as journalists and members of the public seeing that tour, it looked like a huge success. There were thousands of people greeting them everywhere. They were so popular at that time. It felt like this really huge moment for them and a really exciting moment for the monarchy. Now, as we know, that wasn't how they felt about it behind the scenes. And, 18 months later, they had left the royal family.
No proof, no confirmation, just speculation. But speculation is fuel, and right now the fire is already burning. Because in the world surrounding Prince Harry and Meghan, nothing stays small. Every detail becomes a clue. Every silence feels intentional. Every coincidence starts to look like a pattern. And that's what makes this moment different. This isn't just another headline, it's a collision of past and present. Because Australia isn't just another destination. It's history, it's memory, it's 2018, the tour that worked, the crowds, the praise, the feeling that everything aligned perfectly for them. But now, the energy feels off, completely different, almost like returning to a place that remembers a version of you that no longer exists. Since stepping away from royal duties, everything about their public life has changed. The tone, the control, the scrutiny. Every move now exists under a microscope, and every narrative is contested in real time. So when something like this email surfaces, it doesn't land in isolation, it connects to everything that came before it. And that's where the pressure starts building. Because insiders aren't just worried about what leaked, they're worried about what hasn't yet.
So there is that aspect of it where they want to come here and I guess just sort of launch this new phase of their career. But at the same time, it will, of course, invite comparisons to that trip back in 2018 when there were thousands of people out to meet them. And now you're looking at situations where they're selling tickets for events. So Meghan will be doing this.
Think about that for a second. One email already triggered this level of chaos. So what happens if there's more? More messages, more details, more glimpses behind the curtain. The kind of information that turns curiosity into certainty, or worse, into something that can't be controlled anymore. And while the internet debates the cost of the retreat, the exclusivity, the messaging, something quieter is happening underneath it all. A shift in perception. Not loud, not obvious, but steady. Because people aren't just reacting to what they see, they're reacting to what they feel doesn't add up. And that's the real story here. It's not just about a leaked email, it's about trust, about image, about whether the version presented to the world can survive when the private details start slipping through the cracks. Because once that process begins, it rarely stops. And now the question hanging over everything isn't just about this tour, it's about control. Who's controlling the narrative? And more importantly, who's losing it? Because once control starts slipping, it doesn't announce itself, it reveals itself slowly, through reactions, through hesitation, through those subtle shifts in behavior that only become obvious when you step back and look at the whole picture. And right now, the picture around Meghan Markle is changing faster than anyone expected, almost like the story is rewriting itself in real time, without waiting for permission, without sticking to the script that was so carefully planned behind closed doors. What's making this even more intense is how quickly the internet locked on to one specific detail and refused to let it go. The price. Not just mentioned, not just debated, but dissected. Thousands of dollars for access, for proximity, for an experience wrapped in the language of empowerment. And suddenly, that word empowerment starts to feel heavier, almost questioned, almost challenged, as if people are holding it up against the reality they're seeing and asking, does this match or is something slightly off? Because perception doesn't need proof to spread. It just needs a moment. And this leak gave it exactly that. Then the conversation twists again, because it always does. It never stays in one place. It evolves, it stretches, it pulls in everything connected to it. And now the retreat isn't just a retreat anymore, it's a symbol of something bigger that's been following Meghan and Prince Harry for years now. That tension between intention and interpretation. What is said versus what is seen. What is meant versus what is believed. And the uncomfortable truth is those two things don't always align, no matter how carefully everything is presented. Behind the scenes, the pressure isn't just building, it's compressing. Reports hint at quiet adjustments, subtle changes, decisions being reevaluated without ever being publicly confirmed, schedules possibly shifting, guest lists possibly reconsidered, messaging being refined, tightened, controlled. But here's the problem with trying to control a narrative after it starts unraveling. It's already out there. It's already moving. And every attempt to contain it can sometimes make people look even closer, question even more, dig even deeper. Because once curiosity is triggered, it doesn't go backwards. And that's exactly what's happening now. The curiosity isn't fading. It's multiplying. People are connecting dots that may or may not exist, building theories that don't need confirmation to feel convincing, and interpreting silence as something meaningful. Because silence in moments like this never feels neutral. It feels loaded. It feels like something is being held back. And whether that's true or not almost doesn't matter anymore, because perception has already taken over. What makes this situation even more unpredictable is how it's pulling in everything from the past and stacking it onto the present. The Netflix deals, the interviews, the public statements, the previous controversies, none of it is staying separate. It's all merging into one continuous narrative, one long thread that people are now following with even more intensity. Every past moment becomes context. Every decision becomes evidence. And suddenly, this one leaked email doesn't feel like a standalone incident. It feels like another chapter in a much bigger story that never really paused. At the same time, there's this undeniable contrast that keeps resurfacing no matter how the conversation shifts. The idea of advocacy, of inclusivity, of meaningful change, set against images of exclusivity, high price points, and carefully curated experiences. And that contrast is what's fueling the debate more than anything else. Not the leak itself, but what the leak seems to represent. Because people aren't just reacting to information, they're reacting to what they believe that information reveals. And while critics grow louder, supporters aren't disappearing. They're pushing back, insisting that high-profile platforms are necessary, that visibility requires scale, that impact often comes with resources and access. They argue that without that level of attention, these conversations wouldn't even reach the audience they need to reach. But even that defense feeds the tension, because it keeps the debate alive, keeps both sides engaged, keeps the story moving forward instead of settling down. Meanwhile, the Australia trip itself, once the centerpiece of this entire narrative, has almost become secondary, overshadowed by the very thing that wasn't supposed to exist publicly at all. The irony is impossible to ignore. The event designed to generate attention is now being overshadowed by a different kind of attention entirely. Not controlled, not curated, not planned. And that's where the real uncertainty begins to take hold, because no one knows what the next move will be. Not really. Will everything proceed as planned, as if nothing happened? Or will there be quiet changes that signal something deeper is shifting behind the scenes? Will more details surface, adding new layers to the story? Or will things suddenly go quiet, leaving people to interpret that silence however they choose? The unpredictability is what keeps this story alive, because it's not finished. It doesn't feel finished. It feels like something still in motion, something still unfolding, something that could turn again at any moment depending on what surfaces next or what stays hidden. And in a world where information moves instantly and reactions move even faster, that kind of uncertainty becomes its own form of momentum. At its core, this isn't just about a tour or a retreat or even a leaked email. It's about the fragile balance between image and reality, between control and exposure, between what's presented and what's perceived. And once that balance starts to tilt even slightly, it becomes incredibly difficult to steady it again. Right now, all eyes remain locked on what happens next, not because people have reached a conclusion, but because they haven't. Because the questions are still open, the narrative still shifting, the tension still unresolved. And maybe that's the most telling part of all. This story hasn't peaked yet. It hasn't settled. It's hovering, waiting, almost like it's daring the next piece to fall into place. And if there's one thing everyone watching seems to agree on, even without saying it directly, it's this: whatever happens next might not just change this moment, it might redefine everything that comes after it.